Hola amigos y amigas, bienvenidos nuevamente a este espacio. Estamos acompañados nuevamente por Andy Quildan, dueño, promotor y booker de Revolution Pro Wrestling. Hi Andy, it's nice to have you here.
Hi, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. We are now in October, like we talked before at the beginning of August. August was the biggest month for RevPro so far this year. You had the anniversary show, which was something really big again in the Copper Box. And you also had this Summer Sizzler event. You also had your regular repro shows, and you had these crossover shows with GWF in Berlin. So I wanted to ask about if you can do a quick balance of how has it been this month for you for the promotion.
It's been fantastic, really. I mean, I'm what you see right now before you is a product of all of that, just pure exhaustion and a sight of ill health. But we got through it. I don't think you realised it was crazy because we did the lead up, and as you mentioned, we went through everything in terms of the anniversary show, which is a huge undertaking in and of itself. But we made life hard for ourselves by going to York Hall 2 weeks prior to that, and the next week we're in Southampton, and the anniversary. Is there time to breathe? Is there time to think coming off the back of the anniversary? Not really, because obviously we were in attendance at Wembley. And then on the Wednesday or Thursday, on the Thursday, I believe, Thursday morning, we flew to Berlin on 2 hours sleep, did the Friday and Saturday in Berlin, straight back to London, ran a show in London, and then 3 weeks off, which were designed to try and catch up with all the admin and stuff. But is one of those things whereby, if you keep going and you keep moving, your body just keeps moving with you. But when I stopped, boom, all of a sudden I got sick. So I haven't really been able to enjoy the accomplishments. It's great though, because we've got back on the horse, so to speak, now. We've just done the British J Cup. We've been in Sheffield, and it's great to be back at it and great to be back doing it. As I'm sure I alluded to when we spoke before, the anniversary show has never and will never be designed to be a final point, a culmination. It's always just been designed to essentially mark the next chapter. And that's what I believe we've been doing. We've been working very hard in those 3 weeks off in terms of upgrading our production further, reinvesting in the product, and continuing to do everything we can to make it grow.
Perfect. We got to talk a bit in Berlin. I saw your exhaustion, but also this feeling of fulfillment because of everything has been going really well. And let's hope that it gets even better in this last part of the year and next year and years going on. And you mentioned something key. You just had the British J Cup, now also one of the signature tournaments in RevPro. You had talent from different promotions, worldwide talent. And this year, the winner was Leo Rush in a triple threat. Well, it was a fatal four-way, but it got the intervention of Will Faven, the current undisputed cruiserweight champion. And their final contestants were Leo Rush, Dante Martin, both of them from AEW, and Kid Lycos too. So it was an intense match. Leo got this crowning moment in the British scene. He's someone really popular worldwide, especially in the British scene. He was like really asked to be in RevPro for a long time. And also you mentioned something key that we saw an improvement in the production of RevPro in these last weekend shows. Kind of rest and getting back in track these 3 weeks of the shows. But how was making the card for the British J Cup? You had talent from AEW, CMLL, from the British scene, some talents that are not usually in RevPro, like the Lycos, for example. So how was, the decision of making the card?
I mean, it's hard anytime you're dealing with international talent, especially when you're dealing with AEW talent. Obviously, you have to go through a lot of channels to be able to kind of get stuff across the line. So there's almost that period of waiting, and in that period of waiting, you're then having to come up with possible backups in case it doesn't come off. So you're always having to be ready to pivot, but that's the life of the wrestling promoter anyway. So I don't really think it was any different to normal. The decision to include Lycos Gym in the British J-Cup. We've utilised Lycos Gym a lot in the past, but I think that what's very important about when using talent, and what I try to do when using talent, is make sure that everything has purpose. And what I didn't want to do is so obviously the Lycos Gym, last time we saw them was with a Fantastic Mania weekend, because I think they're absolutely perfectly suited to that style of professional wrestling, and they understand lucha libre, which is why it makes them the perfect fit for those Fantastic Mania shows. They demonstrated it both years that we've had these Fantastic Mania UK shows. Prior to that, it was probably the Great British Tag League that we saw them in last year, with maybe one or two bits here and there in between. But the reality is, I don't really want to have talent just treading water, especially when they're as skilled and gifted as Lycos Gym. So it's about waiting until there's an opportunity to do something which is meaningful. And I believe that we've started something which is very meaningful with Kid Lycos and Kid Lycos 2. And it was great. They were great to have them in the British J-Cup. It was an interesting dynamic, and it was something a little bit different on the night. I personally find the J-Cup shows hard because it's a lot of the same style of wrestling. And one thing that Revolution Pro Wrestling's known for is the diversity of styles that we bring. So when you got into the second half, we saw a bit more diversity. You saw the heavy hitting war between one called Manders and Luke Jacobs, and of course that great contest between Zazoya and JJ Gale, which changed the dynamics a little bit. And of course, by its very nature, the four-way is a completely different dynamic as well. Obviously, we never had anything from our tag team division. We never had anything from our women's division. So this is that little bit of diversity is kind of missing. But that's what happens, when we do these, the British J-Cups. It's like once a year. So it creates some great moments and some great memories. But I think if there's anything that I struggle with, it's that the fact that by its very nature, we can't have as much diversity as we may well like.
Thank you for that. October is also a big month. We have two big events. One is specifically from RevPro, which is Global Wars, but the next day we have Royal Quest, which is a New Japan show, but it has the support of RevPro for that, and we will be seeing RevPro talent competing in the show. So how has been the process of building the card for Global Wars? We've seen some of the matches of the card. If I remember correctly, the card will have 7 or 8 matches in the end.
Yeah, so I actually think it's moved to 8 matches now because I can't help myself. Yeah, so the interesting thing is for me with Global Wars is we've spoken before. Anyone who speaks to me knows the faith I have in the Revolution Pro Wrestling brand, the fact that I will stand on my pedestal and I will say to you, we have what I believe to be the most talented roster in the world, or at least the most talented roster that doesn't get the plaudits it deserves, perhaps. I always say we produce pound for pound the best wrestling. We can't compete with a number of aspects because we don't have a budget to compete with a number of aspects as the bigger promotions. But I think pound for pound, if you strip it down to bare bones and what you're getting, in-ring action, I think we produce some of the very best in the world. And that's why when we came to the 12-year anniversary show, Michael Oku and Luke Jacobs were the main event, and I think it's very safe to say they absolutely delivered. So with that in mind, I will highlight and focus the Revolution Pro Wrestling roster as much as possible. But I understand there's the mentality of Global Wars. We only want to see international talent versus UK talent. So it's about getting that balance right. And I believe we've done that with this year's Global Wars. And I think one of the most exciting things about this Global Wars, which makes it stand out from any other Global Wars we've done, but obviously, as Leo Rush announced, you'll be seeing him at Global Wars, an AEW wrestler. We've got Stardom wrestlers. We've got CMLL wrestlers. And of course, the original partnership, we've got New Japan Pro wrestlers as well. It's a real melting pot of professional wrestling, of high-level professional wrestling. And we are going to be delivering a very exciting lineup, which I personally believe stays very true to the Global Wars mindset, but at the same time, it stays true to Revolution Pro Wrestling's roots. So, for example, one of the matches you'll be seeing at Global Wars will be Hiromu Takahashi teaming with Teton, and they will be going up against JJ Gale and Callum Newman. So, of course, Callum Newman is a part of New Japan Pro Wrestling now, but he's got a team that he's known for in Revolution Pro Wrestling with JJ Gale. So they will be reuniting for one night only, and they're going up against CMLL's Teton, New Japan Pro Wrestling's Hiromu Takahashi, who, of course, together, LIJ, and operate in Japan and in Mexico alongside each other. And there's an example of one of the unique matches that you're going to see, whereby we're staying true to those Global Wars roots, yet it very much fits in to everything that Revolution Pro Wrestling is all about. So, like I say, it's an exciting time, and it's a challenge because we want to get as many people on the show as possible, but we also will always stay true to delivering the absolute best quality we can possibly deliver. I guarantee you it's going to be the show of the weekend. You know, like I said, like when we went into All In weekend, you know, I said, you know, that our anniversary show would be, you know, the show for match quality, bell to bell. And coming out of that weekend, I believe we achieved that, you know, because it was banger after banger after banger, and a lot of diversity on the show, and so many different styles on display, from the absolute mayhem of that no disqualification women's tag match to the technical masterpiece that was Hechicero and Zack Sabre Jr., to that main event, the good old-fashioned main event between Luke Jacobs and Michael Oku, and everything in between. And that's the kind of thing we're going to be looking to deliver October 19th at the Doncaster Dome. And that's exciting as well, going to the Doncaster Dome for the first time.
Yeah, we will be looking forward to that. We know what's Global Wars all about, and it's great now that RevPro is and its highest. I truly believe it's pro wrestling at its best. Like, it's the motto of the promotion. But the day after, we have Royal Quest, New Japan show, and it's in London. So I don't know if there was any kind of discussion between RevPro and New Japan when you were deciding the dates and the locations, because we have the Saturday show in Doncaster, and people that want to attend to both shows, like me, for example, and the workers of like yourself that will be going over to London the next day. I don't know how hard will it be.
Yeah, obviously it's hard, but it's what we do. The decision on the venues, it wasn't really that straightforward. Essentially, we had Doncaster Dome booked, and we were going to present a large-scale show, i.e. Global Wars, on that weekend. New Japan had decided they wished to run Royal Quest on that weekend. We already had Doncaster Dome booked and contracts signed at this point, so we obviously honour all of our contracts. And I felt it was very important because, look, in terms of like long-term sustainability, I feel that Doncaster Dome could be a very good venue for Revolution Pro Wrestling. And I say, you know, people say it all the time to us about venues up north. When you coming up north? When you coming here? When you coming there? And I say, look, we'll come as long as there's demand. And if you want to see it, then come out, support it, and we will be back. And obviously, we've been running regular presentations in Sheffield. I think we've done 4 shows there this year so far. We're going back there in December, and you know, people complain about that as well. You know, you ask for it and then complain about what you get. Like, it's only a small amount of people, but you know, a lot of people say, you know, it's the shows we get in Sheffield, they're like an afterthought to Stevenage, for example. Because obviously, even this, you know, the British J Cup weekend, we came to Sheffield 24 hours after Stevenage, but the reason it's been designed like that is because the venue is too small to sustainably bring in big names for that venue. So by coupling it with another show, we're able to spread the cost across and maybe put a little bit from Sheffield onto the budget for Stevenage, which enables us to bring you lineups like you saw in Sheffield with Manders, Mike D, Leo Rush, Dante Martin, Cavanario, you know, in this intimate venue. So and there might be a reason why we're promoting Steve, where it may be perceived that we're promoting Stevenage harder because we've got more seats to sell, we've got more seats to fill up. But we're still, anyone who's been to any of the shows in Sheffield, anyone who's watched them on demand knows they're super high quality. And if I look at the two shows, I actually think I preferred the show in Sheffield to the show in Stevenage. So we always deliver high quality. And I see criticism saying, oh, it's just like a 229 lineup. And I'm like, hang on a minute, let's take a step back here and look at the 229 lineups, because I believe we are delivering at such a high quality month in, month out at the 229. It's just insane. When I think back to when I got into wrestling, if I thought that level of wrestling would be available on such a consistent and regular basis that it's taken for granted, it would blow my mind. So this is the opportunity for Up North to have a quote unquote branded show. And it's going to be as big as it gets, and it's going to be akin to the super shows we put on in London. And my mentality of that venue, because I wanted to do, I could have just been like, look, we're just going to do Royal Quest in Doncaster Dome. Didn't really work because of the size of the venue compared to the size of Crystal Palace, but it would have been easy for me to just say that. Of course, I did see if I could get Doncaster Dome on the Sunday as well, to see if we could just do a double header at Doncaster Dome, but unfortunately it was unavailable. Crystal Palace was available, so that's kind of the way it worked out. That's the way it kind of crumbled. But the reason why it's RevPro show in Doncaster Dome and the Royal Quest in Crystal Palace is because we want to introduce the Revolution Pro Wrestling brand with a long-term vision of coming back to Doncaster Dome and making it a regular venue for us. So that's kind of was the mindset kind of going into it. When we do our analysis across the year of where we want to end up, etc. We had to run one more big show this year, and that's the show. That's the weekend. That's what's booked. So I think it's worked out quite nicely because it's given us access to more talent than we perhaps would have done if it was a standalone show. And also what it does is it enables the fans who are up north, who don't like traveling all the way into London, it enables them the opportunity to see the shows without having to go into London, because I know that's a big thing as well. Like, all the big shows are in London, Well, this is your opportunity to get that big show up north, get that big show in the Doncaster Dome, and support it. And then obviously if it works, we'll come back again and again and again with that similar model. And for anyone who's saying, well, I live further north than that, because that's another thing as well. We go up north, you need to understand, to me, I live in Portsmouth, which is as south as you can go in the UK. So anywhere, even London's up north to me. But anywhere past London is kind of, quite far up. So Coventry, even though it's the Midlands, that's up north to me. But we get to Doncaster, so the people who are from further up, so Scotland, Newcastle, my geography is terrible, but if they come to the shows, so they don't have quite as far to travel as when the shows are in London. So if they come to the shows and support them, then it gives us that confidence to edge that little bit further up. And of course, we're always looking at the postcodes of people who purchase tickets. And, if there's a sudden swell of people from a certain area, it will give us that confidence to go back into those areas. So these are just the decisions and problems that I face on a day-to-day basis that I never even thought would be an issue. And honestly, is not why I signed up to be involved in professional wrestling, but it is what it is. And as I'm sure I said in our last chat with each other, we do what we have to do to make things happen.
Perfect. So anyone watching this, now you understand why this was made that way, and those decisions are not easy and are really, they have to see all the alternatives. It's really good that RevPro is trying to go up north. The UK is really big. Only speaking of England, it's really big. So it's really cool that as a promotion, you want to go over there to give the fans that live up north or in other parts of England opportunities to don't have to go to London to see a big show, which Global War is. So I totally understand why is that. And hopefully, I've seen photos of the venue. and I've seen videos of the venue when it was used before by Ring of Honor. So I have a reference of how it looks like, and I'm really excited to be over there, to be honest. I wanted to discuss something that happened at the anniversary show. That was that Mina Shirakawa won the undisputed British Women's Championship. She's a wrestler from Stardom. She will be competing at Global Wars. We don't know the match yet. She will be also competing at Royal Quest and in a tag match. And we might speculate that her opponent might be on the tag match, but we don't know that. So I won't be going further to that part. But something that I wanted to ask is taking in account that before we have seen Revolution Pro Wrestling Championships be defended in other promotions. Like this year, we've seen Michael Oku defend the championship in many countries, and we've seen also Neon defend the championship in CMLL. So I don't know if there was a discussion having Mina defending the championship in Stardom.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly been discussed. The question came to us: would we be happy with those defenses happening in Stardom? And we've answered yes. So again, the idea is we're very fluid. Okay, so what we don't want championship defenses for the sake of championship defenses. So we want everything to make sense and everything to have a bit of meaning behind it. So the championship is there. If someone were to pin her in a non-title match, in a tag team match, however we put it, then it makes sense for someone to get a shot at the championship. In my mind, I very much want to see that women's championship defended around the world in a similar way to the undisputed British heavyweight championship has, because I think it goes hand in hand with the ethos of Revolution Pro Wrestling. One of the questions we get asked all the time is, your championship, so the British heavyweight championship, it gets defended all around the world. Why don't you make it a world heavyweight championship? And it's like, well, the reason is because our identity is British. And I want people to know that it's a British championship. It's a championship which everyone in Britain knows and wants to attain, and it's from a British promotion who are doing these real big things. And I think if you give it the name a world championship, it kind of it loses its uniqueness and its individuality. Everyone knows what Great Britain is. Everyone knows a British flag, and I think it's made us stand out from the pack. I very much hope that championship can be defended, and I would like to see whoever's a champion in any of our divisions defend the championships across the globe, because I think that's one of the really cool things about pro wrestling in 2024. The world is local again, so we can make this stuff happen. So I'm very excited, and of course Mina Shirakawa is a fantastic ambassador. You see her take those belts everywhere, and it's great to have her representing the women's division. And as she walked into the copper box at the anniversary show, I alluded to on commentary the fact that she's looking to follow in the footsteps of the likes of Hiroshi Tanahashi, Tomohiro Ishii, Minoru Suzuki as Japanese professional wrestlers who've held British Championship gold. So the Japanese audiences are familiar with those British Championships as well, which only continues to add the credibility to the belt. So it's very interesting. It's very exciting. I know she's got a lot of people in the UK as well lining up to have a shot at her also.
Yeah, for example, I talked with Lizzie Ivo in Berlin. She mentioned that obviously but in general, the cultural collective wants to get back that British Championship back in the UK. So we also know that Lizzie will face Dani Luna, former champion. So there are many people lined up for that shot. And also will be interesting, like you mentioned, to have that championship or any other RevPro championship defended in any of the partnership promotions that you have right now. Now, going further, in November, we have the first annual Trios Grand Prix, which is something that has been celebrated, especially now that we know the first team that will be competing in the show, which is a synonym of Trios, which is the Spectral Envoy from Chikara. So that's something really cool. So how has been the process of building the tournament itself, and how hard was to get this trio to participate in this?
I mean, look, I'll use a term. So I watched UFC's show at the Sphere, and Dana White said he was producing a love letter to Mexico, basically. And that really resonated with me because I feel like every single show I produce is essentially my love letter to professional wrestling. And you'll see throughout the history of everything I do, and you'll see callbacks to stuff. You'll see legacy stuff. So even stuff like the name Uprising, for example, is taken from FWA British Uprising. So we always give nods to the past. We always remember the past. We always celebrate the past. And with this trios tournament, we really wanted to, we saw there was a bit of a gap in the marketplace in terms of there's not a big trios tournament anymore. And just we know for hardcore wrestling fans what a highlight of the year the Shakara King of Trios tournament was. And of course, Spectral Envoy very much personify a time in our lives where independent wrestling was just fun. We weren't bothered about, you know, politics and TV ratings and warring promotions. We were just bothered about having fun, right? And that's the kind of atmosphere that I'd like to be able to create at our trios tournament, and at the same time make something else, make another brand that can be an annual event, you know, like the British J Cup, like Uprising, Summer Sizzler, High Stakes, the anniversary show. You know, we want to make the Trios Grand Prix a regular part of our calendar that fans can look forward to. So you can expect to see some unique lineups, and I think, you know, we set the bar high with our first announcement, but you know, I think it's just, like I say, it's just exciting, it's fun, it's different, and that's what I want to keep doing. I want to keep doing different things. I want to keep testing and challenging myself, and yeah, let's do everything we can to try and make this November 16th and 17th in Coventry. Let's do everything we can to try and start this thing with a bang, so to speak, and get everyone excited, get the wrestling world talking, do something a little bit different.
Now, after that, or in parallel, exactly, you have other shows like the regular RevPro shows in London. You just mentioned that you will return to Sheffield. Also, there's pending, I think, one big show before the year ends. I don't know if we will finally have it, which is, like you mentioned, Uprising. It's something that fans usually wait for in December. And also beginning next year, we will have in High Stakes, probably in February. So how has been the process of planning, you know, the next upcoming months for RevPro?
So to be honest, I was going to be doing more.
Okay.
But like, it's I've been cutting myself very thin lately. And I feel like the schedule's still very, very busy. But, you know, I felt like, you know, when you're putting the dates in the diary, you're not taking into account the toll it takes on a human being to be able to push all this stuff over the line. And so many demands, people pull in one way, people pull in another. There's not as many shows in the tail end of the year as we'd initially planned. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because it enables us to put more focus on other things, like, you know, production, like you know, trying to get our merchandising down a bit better, you know, like just any little aspects of pushing this business a little bit further. You know, any week off, it's like when we take a week off, we don't take a week off to just put our feet up and pretend that the wrestling world isn't happening. We take that time off, and we use that time to be able to focus on what's next. So at the moment we're going through a process. So I think by the time this comes out, it will actually be announced. And if it's not announced, then you've got an exclusive. It's going to be Saturday, December the 21st, when we're going to be live at York Hall, Bethnal Green. And that's going to be Uprising 2024, which will be our last big show of the year. In fact, I actually think it's going to be the last show of the year, because we had originally had on our schedule. So basically, two of the events anyway that aren't in the tail end of the year, which were originally in there, were the events in St Neots, because the venue's being refurbed. So we're hoping to be back for next Christmas in the venue, which is going to be like, if everything goes the way they've planned, the venue's going to look like a little mini York Hall. So it'll be a fun time if we can get back in there and it all goes the way they planned. There's talk of us being one of the test events when they get back. So if that happens, it'll be next Christmas. But yeah, as a result, December 21st will be our last show of the year. So that's kind of exciting. Then, well, the process right now is getting the dates in the diary for next year. And as I've said, like I've made no secret of the fact that when we're putting these dates in, a lot of the big show dates don't get announced straight away because we're working very hard on trying to deliver the caliber of card that we know people have come to expect from us. We have to work with venue availability, we have to work with talent availability, but if something comes up, as we've proven this year, we're going to jump on it and we're going to make it happen. Just look at what happened with Summer Sizzler on that MJF show. That's something that was became a reality very late in the day, and it's just an example of what we will do to make stuff happen and the level we will go as well, because we could have rested on our laurels on that show and just had MJF versus Michael Oku, but you got Trevor Lee versus Luke Jacobs, you got Jack Cartwheel versus Leon Slater, you got Donovan Dijak versus Robbie X, and more great RevPro action. So we just keep going. We keep going. There's not really a process in terms of putting the shows in. We just do whatever we can. And like I say, if I could guarantee sellouts everywhere we went, we'd be somewhere every weekend. We'd be somewhere every day. Yeah. So if you want us to be doing more, then like I say, support it. But it's just I say one step at a time.
Perfect. If it haven't been announced yet, we have an exclusive. So look forward to Uprising 2024. December 21st in London, I believe, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, maybe you will call Uprising.
Oh, okay, your hall. Something that many fans of RevPro have been asking before, knowing of the relationships that the promotion was working with Stardom. So I wanted to ask if now that Stardom is part of New Japan Pro Wrestling, was that what made it easier to work along them too?
Ironically enough, just before the pandemic, we were talking with Stardom about, in fact, even probably predating that. So it was before New Japan took over Stardom, or before Bushiroad took over Stardom. We were talking with Stardom about using talent. It was a little bit more difficult. There were certain things that they needed, which included certain people having to travel with the wrestlers, at least for the first few bookings, which dictated that we couldn't book anyone when there was a Stardom show going on. So that obviously made things a little bit difficult. And then, of course, the pandemic came, which just shut everything down. And then Stardom now is a completely different place to what it was when we were talking to them before. Obviously, our first priority coming back from a pandemic was getting back on our feet. And then, obviously, I don't know. Again, it seems like everyone has just knocked 2020 and the majority of 2021 completely out their memories. But if you remember, even when we came back to live events, the only way we could use international talents was by bringing them to the UK. They had to quarantine for a week, and then we'd keep them here for 1 to 3 months at a time to make it as cost effective as possible, I guess. So that was, and that was the only real way we could use talents. And then we started bringing back in talents from New Japan. So start slowly reintroducing the people to those partners, to that partnership. And then obviously we've got to the stage now where the world is back open, and now the world's back open. It's the time to try and make stuff happen. Our immediate focus was our relationship with CMLL, which I think is, again, I always say with everything we do, it's a process. So we walk before we can run. I try. I don't always succeed in not taking too much stuff on. But obviously we want to be able to provide the appropriate attention to detail and the appropriate care with each relationship. We've been working with CMOL now for just over a year, or officially, because obviously we'd had talent over before. It feels like the right time to be doing more stuff. So yeah, and obviously, of course, it helps that that obviously Bushiroad owns Stardom, or I think it was just New Japan that owns Stardom now. I'm not really sure how it's the technicality, but either way, the synergy between Stardom and New Japan Pro Wrestling definitely helps. My relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling definitely helps, and obviously there's new people managing it now. Yeah, it's a good time. It's a good time to make this partnership happen. It's a good time to try and start introducing Stardom talents. I think it also coincides very well with the rejuvenation of our women's division. It's been a long process, but I feel like we've got a very, very solid foundation now. And it's not just a few top girls, it's a whole division. And it's interesting because then that, the focus on that has kind of almost meant that we now need to refocus on our tag team division and refocus on our cruiserweight division. So it's that continual build. We never lose sight of what we're trying to achieve. So with all that in mind, I think we're going to head in to a very, very exciting summer next year. Just a little prediction, right? And I just feel that, obviously, look, you can look at the anniversary show as a place where we're looking to peak stuff, but I just feel that looking at where everything is now and how long stuff takes to kind of resonate with the people and just, let things marinate a little bit. I just feel that the summer's going to be very exciting. And, it's just a prediction. I'm not sitting here going, for sure, you're going to get this, you're going to get that, you're going to get this, you're going to get that. I just feel that where we're at right now is a very nice position. I'm excited and being able to work with Stardom, being able to work with CMOL, being able to work with New Japan, that's exciting. Like I said, it's all about that diversity of styles, and being able to work with Stardom just brings us another one of those things, and hopefully it will open up more opportunities for women in our roster as well. Obviously, Alex Windsor's going over to CMOL, but I just feel like it's very important because obviously you can look at it and you can say, oh look, RevPro is a great gateway into New Japan Pro Wrestling, but obviously New Japan have never had a women's division. So the fact that if we can align with Stardom more closely, hopefully that will provide a clearer avenue for some of our female athletes to get to Japan. And of course, the relationship with CMOL will hopefully allow some luchadoras to go to Mexico and some to come here. It was great having Stephanie Vicker for that cup of tea in May, and hopefully again, I wish her all the best. I wish she was here for longer because she's a fantastic talent. But obviously, there's a number of wrestlers in CMOL who could well feature in the near future as well.
That's great. Before going a little bit about the summer of next year, I wanted to stay in this topic that, or I can say this with confidence, is that this year the women's division has improved a lot. We have been featured many wrestlers in higher position. We always have, or most of the time, we have 2 women's matches in the cards of RevPro shows. So I think that's positive. Also, now we're going to see Alex Windsor going for the women's Grand Prix in the CMLL, and working with Stardom will or might open some doors for the talent that want to go to Japan. So that's also healthy. This exchange of talent, getting to experience new styles. It's really positive for both promotions, for both environments. And also this is something that many wrestlers have told me before, that they want like more shows focused on women's wrestling. So I don't know if you have been investigating or have any plans to maybe do a solo women's wrestling show next year.
No, I mean, we did some when we came back from, like, I can't remember, we did one before, maybe we did the one before the pandemic, and then we've done some when we came back. And look, the reality of the situation is we never sold the tickets we needed to sell to make them. If they were selling tickets, we would have kept doing them, and unfortunately, they just weren't. Really, it goes that they went against my ethos anyway, because I don't like to pigeonhole something. Like. In my belief, I've spoken time and time again about my belief in professional wrestling, is it's all about that diversity of styles, and my belief in every aspect of life is that I don't look at anything. I'm not ticking any boxes, right? So I could tick some boxes and it probably would make people a lot happier. But for example, I don't look at it and say, oh, we need to have 1 women's match on the show, and like now we've got a bigger division. It's like now we need to have 2 women's matches on the show. That will make people happy. That will make people think that we're putting a lot of love, care, and attention into this thing. Look, the proof is in the pudding. We're putting a lot of love, care, and attention into it. There's no set limit on the amount of matches that we could have as the division grows in depth. Is it possible that there could be an all-women's card? Yes, but would it be by design? No. So, for example, the British J Cup this weekend, it didn't have a women's match on the show. But that was because we had 7 matches, and I just felt like we couldn't have added an 8th match, which would have been without a purpose, and for the crowd, that specific crowd. And obviously we were working on a loop. I say we were working on a loop, like I'm an old school wrestling promoter. The Sheffield Stevenage bit is a bit of a loop, like logistically speaking. So, so we kind of had to use the same wrestlers from A to B because of travel, logistics, etc., etc. The things that we don't really take into consideration until they're there right in front of us. It's never by design. Every single match which is on a show is there by merit and merit alone. So no one needs to ask themselves any questions. No one needs to say, because I'm a certain sex, because I'm a certain color, is that the reason I'm booked on a show? No, the reason you're booked on the show is because of your ability. It's because of your talent. It's because you've earned your spot on the show. So like I say, I wouldn't rule it out per se, but like, again, for that to happen, realistically speaking, it's going to dictate the division getting even more depth. So for example, right now, if you were to say to me, could we run a tag team only show, unless we had makeshift tag teams, the answer is no, because we don't, the tag team division doesn't have enough depth at the moment to be able to have 6, 7, 8 matches of a very high caliber. Mm-hmm. So rather than looking at it like this, that, and the other, look at it like a division, look at it like, so could the cruiserweights, and again, cruiserweights, I don't even think they could at the moment, because if you look at the British J-Cup, we brought in a lot of outside talent, and we had the non-cruiserweight matches as well, which has obviously made sense because of the style of wrestling. We wanted to mix up the style of wrestling that we were portraying. So to add depth, it's not just about singles wrestlers. It'll be about adding women's tag teams, like real tag teams. And then obviously, naturally, as you add that depth, it will create a diversity in styles. You add that diversity in styles, then you can start talking. But this is a very, very long process. So to me, I prefer not to put labels on anything. I prefer not to make promises I can't keep. I prefer to just tell it like it is. And the reality of the situation right now is the women's division, much like the whole of Revolution Pro Wrestling, is deeper than it's ever been before. I'm genuinely excited about its future and some of the boundaries we can push with it moving forward. A lot of mentality has to change. But again, that will happen with time. And I think that it's, like I say, it's an exciting time. And I'm very proud of what we've done so far. And I'm excited about what the future may bring. A big part of this as well is, again, I'm speaking, I feel like I'm going to get myself in trouble by saying this, but I'm just trying to speak it like it is. A big thing for the women's division as well, which has been great with the Cutthroat Collective versus the Resistance, or whatever you want to call them, the people who are standing up to the Cutthroat Collective. A great thing about that is the angles, the stories that we've been telling throughout it. And I think it's new to a lot of women involved as well. And I think that the more they do, the more they'll be able to refine that. And I think that they're not at fault for it. It's just one of those things whereby, as you said, in the past, maybe we'd have only one women's match on the show. Maybe we'd have no women's match on the show. Maybe there's shows around the country which have a women's match to tick a box, but it's inconsequential. So when you start telling stories, it's a new art. But it's an art that everyone has. So it's not just it's not exclusive to sex. I mean, everyone coming through has that challenge. It's like you can become the best wrestler, and then it's time to start telling some stories. And I've had this chat with many, many wrestlers, and it's a part of that development. So we're just a little bit earlier in that process with our women's division, but as everyone gets more used to it, They will pass on their knowledge, they'll pass on their experiences, the division will grow in depth, it will become more exciting, and it will just keep snowballing from there. And that's what I mean. Like, the reality of the situation is we probably don't have enough shows to service every single person on the roster the way I'd ideally like to. Obviously, as time goes, we're adding shows and that's helped. And I think that really, when you look at it, the addition of shows, so if you look at our schedule this year, it's without a doubt been the busiest year we've ever had. I think last year was the busiest year we've ever had before that. And I think it means that it's absolutely no coincidence that that kind of coincides with us having the deepest level of talent we've ever had. So they're getting more reps in and we're able to highlight more wrestlers. You know, look at the shows this weekend. There was no Michael Oku on the shows, you know, and I think that that says a lot. The fact that, you know, one of our feature guys for the past 4 years wasn't on the shows, yet I don't think the shows dipped in quality. Mm-hmm. So I think that tells you a lot, you know, about where we're at right now. And I think that, you know, that's where we need to get with everything. You know, we need that depth in every division. So, you know, we'll see the continual growth of the women's division. So look, in my mind, I'm looking at it and I'm like, the heavyweight division is the strongest right now. And the women's division, I think, is number 2 in terms of strength of the division right now. And then I think you're neck and neck with that tag team and cruiserweight division. And I think that we're doing some exciting stuff in the cruiserweight division. We just need to add some more faces to that division. And I think that that's why it's so cool having a champion like Will Caven. It's fresh, it's exciting, it's somewhat chaotic, and that's what personifies Will Caven. You know, I think we've told a very nice story with Sunshine Machine coming up to this point, and now we're at a stage where who's going to step up and take him on? And this is a process. This is a process we're under now, and that's why I say when we get to the summer next year, that's where everything peaks. So we're in a very good place.
Yeah, like you mentioned, I think that every year RevPro just gets bigger, and that's good for the promotion. It's good for everyone involved in the product. And I am sure that next year will be even bigger. I'm excited also for the summer. So finally, taking into account that it potentially might be the biggest year in RevPro yet, 2025. This is a question in 2 parts. Like, the first is related to CMLL. Like you mentioned before, we have been having since last year Fantastica Mania UK, which is something delightful. It's something really fresh, something really fresh and cool to have the CMLL talent coming over to Europe, specifically to the UK. Having the chance to see amazing talent, Hechicero, Místico, legends like Atlantis competing over here. You just mentioned Stephanie Baker, who is one of the biggest women's wrestlers right now. So I don't know if there's if you guys plan to run this in May or maybe return to September. Like, what's the first year?
Well, honestly, I don't know. That's one of those. That's one of those ones whereby we'll look at the schedule, we'll look at the calendar, and then we'll try and figure it out from there. Like, I think that May this year, I feel like it just made sense. Just in terms of, look, you've got your shows, so in many ways, look, I knew that the payoff to Luke Jacobs and Michael Oku, the setup was obviously in March, but the payoff wasn't until August. So I knew we had a long road to walk between March, or the end of March to the start of April to the end of August. My thing was, what can we sustain the interest during that time? And then I was looking at where there's breaks in the schedule, and I was like, look, May's kind of a time where there's not really much going on. Because, look, realistically speaking, once we got to June, July, because of the size of the Copperbox show, June and July, a lot of focus has to be spent on that. And I felt that we do August, and I felt that Fantastica Mania perhaps could get lost in the shuffle of the anniversary show and the hangover from the anniversary show. So that was kind of my mindset behind it. I don't really have a strong thought one way or another about kind of where it's going to land next year. But maybe it's a trial and error thing. Maybe we'll try it another time and see if that does any better. But like I do genuinely feel that, and I think I alluded to last time, I feel that the Fantastica Mania, or CMLL brand in general, is one which is very much at the ground level right now of what it can and will be in the UK. I think that for me anyway, the first star was born. Obviously, they're all stars as wrestling legends, but to that wider audience in the UK, the first star was born in Hechicero at the anniversary show. Because you heard the reaction that Hechicero got, and you feel that Hechicero could be akin. Because if you look at New Japan Pro Wrestling, look at our relationship with them, and look at the guys that we kind of consistently brought back. You know, your Tomohiro Ishiis, your Minoru Suzuki's, guys like that. They became stars within the UK. They became draws within the UK. And I feel that Hechicero is going to be one of those names moving forward in the future as well. I feel like Masquerade is going to be one of those names as well. And I feel like after Global Wars weekend, that could be the time when Masquerade really announces his arrival, you know? So it's, yeah, I feel like it's just, you know, like I say, it's just at that ground level right now. And I feel like this is one of those relationships that in 5 years' time, we'll be looking back at and saying, wow, what a good decision that was, kind of, you know, getting involved with CMLL at that time. It's always going to have a casual interest, I believe, Lucha Libre, but I feel like, you know, amongst hardcore wrestling fans, I think that alternatives are just very important always. And I feel that a lot of wrestling, so WWE and AEW, we're going off on one here, but this is my speciality, going off on one. But WWE and AEW used to be very different to one another. Very, very different, you know. But now, WWE and AEW are very similar to one another. One of AEW's biggest attractions was it was different. You know, it was providing us with something different. And I think that's what CMLL does. And hopefully, you know, AEW can utilize their relationship with CMLL as well to help diversify their product also. But it's very hard. It's very different. It's easier for me to do than AEW to do, because AEW are producing episodic weekly TV and many, many shows and many, many hours of content every week. And they've got hundreds of wrestlers under contract that they need to try and service all of them. So it's very hard for them to bring in outsiders and make them feel special and give them the attention they need. For me, it's a lot easier to do that. But like I say, I believe that style of wrestling is the stuff that, you know, the people who are watching, because I feel like it's very easy to become desensitized to the level, the caliber of wrestling you're seeing each and every week. I mean, if you look at AEW, so as we're filming this, tonight's show's got Danielson versus Okada. It's got Ospreay versus Ricochet on free TV on just a Wednesday night. Do you know what I mean? So it's very easy to take for granted the fact that we're getting this world-class wrestling on a week-by-week basis. And I think that as a result, that becomes not so unique. So what becomes unique? Another style of wrestling, the spectacular lucha libre. And I genuinely feel that anyone who's able, and if any young wrestlers are listening to this, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again, if any young wrestlers are able to take the lessons of lucha libre and take some of the spectacular offense and some of the great techniques that you see in lucha libre, and you're able to contextualize it to, should we say, for lack of a better term, American style pro wrestling, then you're onto a winner. You'll be ahead of the game. Very much how, like Bryan Danielson, Nigel McGuinness, Colt Cabana took that British style of wrestling, you know, and took that back to America. They came over here, they got that British style and took it back to America and created the hybrid style of wrestling that kind of we're more familiar with to this day. And I think that anyone who can do that with lucha libre, that's almost like the next evolution of this thing. It's just my thoughts on where it's going, but we'll see. It may not go that way at all, you know, but to me, that excites me. It provides something which is very, very different. And don't get me wrong, I love all styles of wrestling, you know, and Just for example, and just want to mention his name right now, one called Manders this weekend. To me, boom, blew my mind. I was like, that's the guy, or that's a guy who can be the guy, right? I feel like, he's someone who could play a very important role moving forward as well. But again, the reason I name checked him was because he's such a different style to anything else, and the complete opposite of what I was talking about with lucha libre. But again, like I say, you can contextualize lucha libre and you can work that style in with the style of the Manders, for example. I'm not expecting Manders to be doing topes and stuff, but his opponents around him, that creates something very exciting, and that's what we always have to be looking for. We always have to be trying to stay one step ahead, and we always have to be trying to innovate and keep things exciting.
Okay, Andy, thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure to have you here again. I don't know if you have anything to tell the fans watching this.
Just again, thank you for your support. Thank you for listening to me again. It's been nice to not talk about how did you get into wrestling, etc., and just talk about kind of where we're at. And again, it's only a few months since our last conversation, but stuff's already moved on so quickly. So you can see within a year how fast stuff can move and how fast stuff can evolve and how fast stuff can grow. So just thank you once again to everyone who keeps supporting. I hope that people are noticing the improvements that we're making with our production, with the on-demand service, etc. And just know that again, it's one of those things whereby, so just for example, we have made, I believe we made great steps with our audio in the last 12 months. But then when we came to the arena, there were many problems. So I could tell you now, I can confidently get the audio down for our live streams, confidently get the audio down for the smaller buildings. But then when we move to the bigger buildings, it brings in more problems. So it's just another challenge and another thing that we're going to work on, and we add it to the list of things to work on. It's a process, like I say. So it's just kind of frustrating that we get there and we've got it all down in my mind, that side of things, because that was the most important thing to sort first, that audio thing, and then to move on from there. I think we can move on from there, and then when we're produced with a different environment, it's like boom, and it's like feels like there's more eyeballs on this than anything we've done in the last year, and people are just like, same old RevPro, we've been working very hard. I think anyone who watches it knows that. And then obviously from that point, the next part of the improvements were the cameras. And obviously none of this stuff is cheap. So we've tried to do it in everything we do in the most sustainable way possible. And we tried to future-proof ourselves somewhat. But then we realized getting UK cameras meant to get the full capabilities out of them. We had to get new cables. We had to get new memory cards, which transferred quicker. So just a lot of work in making this happen. And as we speak, we're 2 shows into this process of upgrading our production capabilities, and we will continue to do it further. And what's exciting as well is we may move into a stage whereby, as technology improves in the future, we may well move into a stage where we're able to remaster shows, and so you can see an even higher quality, because the quality I can see from my end is way higher quality than the quality that our on-demand service is capable of putting out there. And as technology improves, that stuff will improve as well. But it's a process. So thank you for being patient with us as we make it happen, and an understanding of the situation we're in, because it's not easy. And you have to understand, as I said the first time we spoke, the only reason I got into this is because I wanted to put on good wrestling shows. Nothing more, nothing less. Everything else is attached to it, and it's because I've got such a passion for it, but I continue to invest. Trust me, I would have much rather, I wouldn't, again, that money that I reinvested in the cameras, reinvested in the product, I could have paid myself. I could finally start making some money doing this, but that's not the way it works. That's not the way you're able to continue to grow. And I'm very much in it for the long term. So, you know, I'm just excited about the future. Like I say, our mind is on continued growth. We're in a good position right now. We've had a very busy year, and we're going to keep on. We're going to keep on coming. We're going to keep on coming. And yeah, anyone watching this knows that when we say something, we do everything we can to achieve it. I don't want any one of these interviews that I do for people to be able to look back historically and say, well, he lied about that. That didn't happen. This didn't happen. I want people to look back at these interviews and say, wow, you know, he was pretty spot on with what he said. You know, that's why I always just try to speak the truth. If you speak the truth, you don't have to remember your lies. And I think more people should learn that. But yeah, so please support us, revproondemand.com. Come to shows, revolutionprowrestling.com for tickets. Check us out on socials and continue to spread the word. Because again, one fan at a time, we're growing it. And there's more fans now of Revolution Pro Wrestling than there was last time we spoke to one another. And like I say, that's the only metric I'm judging myself on.
Perfect. Okay, Andy, see you soon.
Thanks very
Hasta la
much.
próxima, amigos. Eso ha sido todo por hoy. Hasta la próxima.